Good evening. Welcome to another edition of The Best Is Yet to Come. I am your host, Stephanie Seigle, and as you may or may not know, for our new people that are in the audience today and watching us, the platform of The Best Is Yet to Come is to be a resource to educate, empower, and to help our people live the best life that they possibly can. And it's my belief that one of the ways to do that is for others to share their experiences, their wisdom, and just be a resource. So tonight's show is no different from what we've been doing in the past. However, what is a little different, we have a returning guest tonight by popular demand. His name is Tony, and he's going to share his story with you. For those that is not familiar with Tony's story, maybe didn't see him on when he was here on our first season. He has a phenomenal story, and what we want to find out from Tony is what has he been doing or what has he been up to since the last maybe 2 years ago that he was here. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. I just want to say first and foremost, I'm humbled and honored to be here for the second time. It was a privilege to be here the first time, and that was a great experience. So, I got the call from you, and I was just humbled again to be back here. So thank you again.
Yes,
I had a good time.
yes. Can you share with our audience, you don't have to do the full because it is on my page and on YouTube, but just share with the audience what brought you, the topic that we talked about on the first show that you were here.
Well, I think for the main thing, it was just kind of putting my experience out there so I can help. I come from a city where we come from a lot of adversity we have to overcome, and I just felt like a lot of times when we get that, we do have some resources out there for some help, but they're limited, and a lot of times they come from people that don't look like you.
Right.
And I think one of the biggest things for me was getting my story out there for some people out there that look like me, that have been through the same struggles, played city sports, and went through some of the same mistakes that they had to overcome, and maybe they haven't yet, but maybe they can identify them through me or someone that looks like them.
Okay. Do you mind just going into a little details about your story?
Well, I'm just a regular kid from Boston. I grew up, playing city sports, being really active, me and my brother, hey mom, doing regular things. And then somewhere along the line I got kind of caught up, doing things that a lot of teenagers probably aren't proud to do, talk about now, but I got caught up doing some things, and it was a challenging moment for me because I hit a low. I had some expectations that I had set for myself, and I had a standard that I wanted to live up to, and I kind of felt real short of that, and I had to do a lot of soul searching, and I had to really figure out what it is I wanted to do. I had a lot of support, and I didn't want to let them down, so I made a decision on that point that day that I was going to be the best person I could be. Not for just them, but for me, because I owed it to myself too. And a lot of people don't realize how much being accountable for yourself really makes up for that. So I wanted to be able to be the first person to say, hey, listen, you can make mistakes, you can mess up, you can fall, but it's not about that. It's all about how you stand up.
Right. Now, it's funny that you say that. One of the things that I often tell people, and you can share with the audience your take on that, yes, you have to be accountable for one's action, but a lot of time we don't forgive ourselves. And when we don't forgive ourselves, it's my belief that we stay stuck. What is your take on that?
I think that that's reasonable. I think a lot of that within reason, it is hard to forgive some of the mistakes that you made, but part of growing through that experience is being able to accept that.
Okay.
You really can't run from it. That's the one thing that I learned, is that you can't duck any of your adversity.
Right.
Because you're going to be running forever.
Right.
It's one of those situations where if you did something at some point and you feel like you can't even look yourself in the mirror, that's what's going to haunt you forever.
Right.
And even though it might not be, it's a long journey. It's not going to happen overnight. It's nothing that it's easier said than done. But it is important to accept that. Accept whatever it is that you can't live with.
Right.
Because without that acceptance, it's hard to move forward.
Right, absolutely.
You can only put so much water under the bridge.
Right.
It starts to,
overflow. Right. Right. So, where are you at now? What are you doing now?
Well, now, It's crazy, you know, we're having this conversation now, and I'm a little, I get a little nervous talking about it because I never really take the time to look back and see what I'm doing now. But I get so focused on going forward and, you know, trying to build the best future I can. But I just passed 9 years. 9 years, and March 1st was pretty much 9 years since I've been in the worst situation, in my life. And that's proud to say sometimes, because I never really take back and look, because the years just kind of go by as we get older. You know, time goes by. But you know, now I'm still an entrepreneur. I'm still working in the youth, still working in the city. You know, still putting that good energy forward. I'm a senior salesman now. I help a lot of people, family, friends, professionals all over. I'm in the auto business, so if you need a car, come and see me.
Can you tell us where at?
Yes, I'm at Acura, the #1 Acura.
Okay, all right.
Look that up, come find me.
Okay, all right. So let's talk about what it took, the process, to get you from 9 years ago to now.
I appreciate that question, because that's what people don't really like to talk about. That's the fun stuff. It took a lot. And I got to tell you, you know, shout out to my support that's in the audience. Say, you know, we've been through so much together. When I tell you, you know, from getting from point A to point B, that point, that destination point, that's where it gets real lonely. It gets real dark, because you got to figure out a lot of things. You know, the people that you were with at one point, they might not be with you when they get to the next point. And a lot of people have a hard time letting that baggage go. A lot of relationships, you know, keep people where they're at, and you got to really, really, really make a decision. What are you living for? You know, and I got 2 beautiful souls that keep me young and fresh. Malik and Maya, how you doing? And you know, there's just certain things that you have to find that's most and more dear to you. And that's part of the journey. People can't run from that. Those little responsibilities, those small wins and those moral victories, that's what carries you from peak to peak to peak. I think that's the best thing I can say, is you got to focus on the small wins. Because that's how you get to look back and say, wow, it's been 9 years. I don't even think I'm done. You know, and it's refreshing to say that, though, because I remember there was a day where I had full-blown anxiety, like not even knowing what it was going to be like in a year. You know, so not even.
Let's talk about that. A lot of my audience may or may not know that is my background. I'm a clinician by trade, and we see so much of different mental health issues and stuff. And you said, talked about anxiety. How did you overcome that, or have you been able to overcome that? Let's talk about that.
I would say no. I mean, if I'm being completely honest with you, I don't think that's something that you can really overcome. I think it's something that you kind of deal with, and you know, I believe that, you know, the young, we like to say we're fighting our demons. You know, that's a real thing, though. And I think
we say that too.
You say that too?
Yes.
Yeah, I ain't that. But the thing is, I feel like, you know, part of that growth and part of all of that is that you have to be able to, you know, I want to say, be so real with yourself where your flaws, they turn into your strength.
Now.
And you got to own that. Like, there's nothing that you can say to me that I'm not already aware of myself. And because of that, that's what kind of gives me the armor to be full confident in what I need to do. And that anxiety, it's normal. People like to hide behind it. It's a bad word. I'd like to wear that as a badge of honor now. Anxiety, depression, people don't like to talk about it, but you know, it's a real thing. There's people that are around you every day that they were, whether all-star athletes, varsity, they were just work ethic, everything, and something happened in their life that you're not aware of, and they got traumatic experiences, and now they're sad all the time. They don't have any energy. They're boring now. They're out the loop, and there's all these things that people don't like to address. But I find that when you come face to face with those things, and that is how you overcome those obstacles. When you run from those things, that's how you run from. So, yeah, that anxiety was real, but I had to address that. What was my issue? I remember, I can tell you right now that one of the biggest things that sticks with me that I'll never forget is going out to eat with my mother.
You shared that, yes.
I shared that last time.
No, but share it again.
I went out to eat with my mother. It was my first time going out to eat, and I remember sitting down, and I couldn't wait to get this lobster omelet, you know, everything. And I got that, and I couldn't eat it because I was so, like, overwhelmed with the situation. And I feel like that was a test to me. That was never a situation where I felt like, you know what, geez, you can't go back out the house no more. Look, you can't do it. You can't be in public. Those are all tests. And I just feel like, personally, overcoming those tests or championing those odds or whatever the case is, that's fighting your demons.
Right.
So I don't run. The anxiety is real, and I feel like when you hit it head on, that's what makes you a champion.
Now, what have you did to hit it head on? Because I'm sure somebody's listening or watching this show and have been dealing with anxiety and don't know what to do.
Well, I would say find a support system first. You need support. You're not gonna do it by yourself. It's something that you really gotta believe in too. Even and if it is by yourself in the beginning, tap into a source. Like there's books out there, there's help out there, there's something out there. But don't get it twisted. Like it's a lot of self development. Personal development is key. I believe in that. I believe in that.
Now, would you advise someone to seek professional counseling?
I mean, if it's necessary, yes. I don't look. If it's necessary, yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, okay. What are you doing in the community?
Well, I will say this. Right now, I take pride on, when I was young, one thing that I don't think I realized it at the time, but I was able to catch on that later on, is I was always around some really strong mentors.
Okay.
And that was something that I realized that, wow, there's a lot of value there. And what I'm noticing in just being around people my age or even a little bit younger, that's something that's missing. That mentorship.
Yeah.
Having somebody that's open, that's going to be willing to pour into them. Everybody's so judgmental now on social media. It's like I got kids who are growing up in all this. It's very different.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that you got to focus on.
Now, what do you think we as a community can do more to bring those type of mentor groups to the forefront?
I mean, I think it takes real first-hand representation. You're not going to connect with people that, you have to have real representation. I mean, I think that they try. I feel like they have organizations out there that try, but I think it's really easy to, I think it's really easy to get lost back into people judging them, and there's no hope, because when it's not your kid, you're not gonna, care as much. I've found that out. Everybody has their own issues. So what you have to do is have to have a community and a culture of people that's willing to help their youth.
Right.
And that starts with first-hand representation.
Right.
I can tell you we're not the only community that has these ideas, but we aren't the only community that's not doing it.
Right.
I don't really have all the power in the world to make those moves. I wish I did, but
Now, when you say representation, what does that look like in your opinion?
People like me, people that have done it.
Okay.
I remember some of the people that I've talked to that I've seen them when I was young and I was, reckless and didn't make good decisions. I would see people that came from that and be like, okay, I would look at that. I was like, this dude, he got on his gaiters, he got on his suit, he's doing something, he's doing something, it can happen.
Right.
It's just all about representation. I mean, we talk about, can I use an analogy?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
We talk about what you see and what's obtainable, right? We from a city where we want to be basketball players, football players, or rappers, right? Because that's all we really see that's happening. Like, everybody that didn't go to school, or what can you do? Be a ball player, be a rapper, be an entertainer. Now it's the internet. Well, I will tell you this. If you saw more people in those sports worlds that weren't athletes, that looked like you and I, that were executives, that made, GMs, that made personnel decisions. They couldn't play ball for nothing now. Maybe never made a team in their life. But they had knowledge that they could bring to the table, because they didn't look like another person, they weren't qualified.
Right.
But maybe if you saw a black executive, a black owner, or those in that level, it would inspire you to be more than just a ball player.
Right.
More than just a rapper.
Right.
And that's all I mean by first-hand representation. We see LeBron James, Michael Jordan, and Kyrie. We see all these dudes, and we know we could do that. And I just feel like if we had more representation of people doing what we want to do, owning businesses, teaching people the language of finances, teaching people things like that, and really getting that information out there with people that look like them, I think that's how you get it done.
I agree with you. Last week, which you can see it on BNN tomorrow, my guest that I had on here was another great show. This person, he had been wrongfully incarcerated for 22 years. He came out, he started a nonprofit business. It's called Yard Time Entertainment. And I'm sure you probably know where he got the concept from, right? And he has this men's group. It's for mental health, because that's another thing that seems to be taboo in our culture, in our community. And I think that what he's doing is a great thing. Like in a couple of months, he's going to have a father and daughter dance, you know, for the community. He does a lot in the community. Also someone that I would like to introduce you to. So we do have, I know that we don't have enough, but we do have some people out there that is trying to make, you know, a difference.
Okay.
Yeah, so. No, but I hear exactly what you're saying, though, not the right representation.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah, because one of the things that I feel that if I have not gone through something, how can I explain or show the next person how to overcome?
Exactly. And sometimes, you know, you got to bridge that gap, because sometimes you're not always going to have the answer.
Right.
But you have to bridge the gap.
Right.
You know, so.
Now, how do you think we bridge the gap?
Well, it's easier said than done.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, I don't want to say, look, just look at it like this. And I would ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've been fortunate enough to play in a lot of different sports gyms. Let's just keep it that simple.
Right.
I've seen some sports gyms where you can tell they care about this gym, they care about the people that go to this gym, and that's evident by the appearance and by the whole environment around it. Then there's other gyms where it's like they can care less.
Right.
Now, what does that speak to? Is it the people or is it the organization?
The organization, I believe.
So which one is it? Because I think that, you know, you kind of teach people how to treat the organization as well. So it's just so many issues that, you know, it can't be solved by one thing. But if we all know there's an issue and there's an agenda and we all want to work towards that agenda, I think it's possible if we put our minds together. But the problem is, you know, are we really trying to help people, or are we trying to gain from something or gain from the situation?
Right.
So that's what it comes down to.
Right.
Who's going to gain from that?
Well, definitely not the people that are in need of the services, you know, in need.
What I mean by that is, who's going to gain from that is us, right? Our generation, our next generation, our people. We're going to gain from that, right?
So let me understand now. You're saying if it's invested properly, if we invest in properly into our community, right? Okay.
Right.
Yes.
So I think that needs to be the focus of the conversation too.
Okay. Okay.
But you know, I'm just a kid from Boston that lived through all of these things, and I've seen it from different aspects. I've been fortunate enough to be in and around a lot of organizations, and you know, look, it's not going to take one person's voice. It's going to take a lot of people. But it's possible.
Right.
It's really possible. That's really the one thing that I stand for. I believe in. You know, I stand. I stand for what I believe is good fortune. And, you know, that's not coin. I think that certain things are. You know, they always say with luck is what preparation meets opportunity, right? Well, what happens when good character meets that opportunity?
Right.
You know, that's when things start to happen. Everything starts to fall in place. So it doesn't really matter what you've been through, where you've been, you know, what your story is. I mean, everybody's had to overcome some adversity at one point.
Right.
It's about how you respond. And that makeup of a person is everything. There's a lot of opportunities that come to people that if you sit back from afar, you can judge them and say, well, why does he get that and I don't? But there's also a reason why he's there and you're not. So we don't really know why. But the point is, if you're that kind of person that deserves an opportunity, it will come. You just got to earn that.
Right.
And I think that gets lost in a lot of stuff.
Now, what are some ways you feel that a person can earn these opportunities?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, nothing's going to be handed to you.
Right.
You got to go out there. I personally don't think that I have any value to you or anyone that's listening or anybody that's spoken to in the past, you know, my family, my friends, or anybody that I don't have any value to them if I don't hold myself to the same standards I'm asking them to hold themselves to. So I got to hold myself accountable now. If you can't do that with yourself, how are you going to expect somebody else to do it?
Right.
Off the rip.
Right.
So if you're not ready to take that step, you got to work on that first.
Right.
So first things first, work on that.
Right. Now, I think we touched on this the last time you was on. How would one work on that?
How would one work on that? Well, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How would I think it's easier said than done. I mean, is there a book that you like to read to get into that whenever you feel challenged by something and you kind of want to?
Yeah, I do meditation. Everyone doesn't know, but I'm very spiritual, so I read my Bible. I like to focus on positive things.
Okay. So I agree with that. And this is why I asked the question, because what I'm noticing in my life is that everybody has something different that they do. But there's one common denominator, and it's always something rooted in their spirituality or some form of meditation. So I would say that in so many different words. your form of meditation could be different from mine.
Right, absolutely.
You know, your spirituality could be different from mine, but there's something you believe in that's tapped into you that's guiding you. And I believe in that. Now, I'm not necessarily going to sit here and say I'm pro-religion or anti-religion, but in the spiritual realm, I just think that certain things happen and there's no explanation for it. And sometimes you got to trust that. We talk about vibes, right? Positive vibes, good vibes. But what is that? What's a vibration?
Right.
It's a spiritual realm. So if we believe in that, I think to a certain degree that you have to open up your mind to other forces. Now, that negative energy, if that's part of your diet, what you think is going to happen?
Negative.
Somewhere down the line.
Right.
It's going to happen. It's inevitable. So you ask me, how does one change that? First things first is change your diet.
Okay.
Positivity. I don't care what it is. There's always a good day. There's
Right.
always a bright side.
Right.
We have tough days every day. You don't know what anybody did today. Before we got to shit, you don't know how your day was, my day was, but that's not the focal point. We're here. So if you can focus on that part of it, well, then you're always going to have a bad day.
Right. And you know, I like that because I believe, and I say this a lot to different people that I come in encounter with, we can tell our mind something and continue to tell it, we'll begin to believe it. Once you believe it, you're putting it out there. Your action will show what your mind believes.
Right. I believe in that.
Yes.
You know, and I think, so, you know, I found a way to answer your question, and that's what it is. You have to take responsibility for that. And I use diet as a term, not as actual what you're eating.
Right.
But people don't realize there's so much things that go into it. We talk about, what's our favorite thing? Brownies, cookies, ice cream, sweets. You know, we don't taste any salt when we eat those, but there's salt in that cookie, you know, because there's balance in there, and that's part of the ingredient that makes it a whole cookie.
Right.
So somewhere along the line, you got to get that right. There's
Right.
something there. And, you know, if I could do it, trust me, you can do it.
Right. And you know, you talk about diet. I get the concept. I mean, what you take in.
Right, what you take in.
Right. Not necessary food, but also a diet for the mind, for the brain, for the soul, you know. And that's like we talked about that positive energy and stuff, reading and stuff, making yourself, like you said, accountable.
And I believe in that. And when you hold yourself accountable, honestly, what happens is things start to, they just work a little differently. Because, I mean, you got to be honest with yourself. You know, if you're not able to do that, then in a lot of ways you can't expect anybody to, you can't expect any real expectations for yourself.
Right.
Because if you're not accountable for your actions, and I mean, we all know there's just no place for that, simply put.
Right.
Anyone that can hold himself, anybody that's worth their salt, you know, a respectable person will understand that, you know, there's consequences to our actions and you got to hold yourself accountable. And if you have been through what I've been through, there's no excuse for it. It doesn't matter.
Right.
You can be better.
Right.
And my thing is, it can happen if you want it to. And sometimes you just got to make a choice. And I made that choice. I'm proud of that choice. I wear all my adversity like a scar, like a badge of honor. I'm proud of it. I'm proud to share it. Because I believe that, hey, if somebody hears it, that's going to be maybe the reason why they don't, or maybe the reason why they do.
Right. Right. I was having a conversation with my daughter earlier, and we was talking about, you know, different reentry programs and just, you know, how the system sometimes is stacked up against. We did a research, and I think it's 70 to 80% of people that look like us return to jail. What is your prison? What is your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm not known to be anything but honest, so I'm gonna be honest.
Okay.
I think a lot of people gotta be real with themselves. Let's go. A lot of that goes back to what we've been talking about this whole night. There's a lot of people in there, and I'm not speaking towards anybody personally. I'm just saying in general that they could have made a decision that I made a long time ago. Trust me. You know, they could have made a decision like, you know, what am I doing? This isn't it. You know, there's a lot of people, I'm not alone, that made that decision. So what I say to the people that go right back in there, I say you have a choice to some degree. Yes, the system is designed to keep you on a leash. Yes, the system is designed to pull you back in. Yes, it's stacked against you. And they're actually waiting for you to do it. That's the crazy part. But there's a way out, though.
Which would be?
Handle your business. Ask yourself, what do you want to do? The other day, this is a true story. I was cleaning out some old, mail in my house, and I came across an old envelope. And I opened it, and you know what it was? It was a paper that I wrote, like, my goals down.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I remember, I don't even remember when I wrote it, but I wrote down goals for like the first like year. They'll be very specific goals. And I remember reading them out loud, my lady over there, and I was like, wow, I checked every single thing off the list. I couldn't believe it because I remember writing it.
Okay.
That's the craziest part.
You don't remember writing
I
it?
remember writing it,
Okay.
vividly.
Okay.
But I'm looking back at it and I'm like, wow, I really did that. So at some point you have to ask yourself, what do you want? If it's what this is, okay, there's a way of getting there. You just got to follow that. Now, I'm not saying it's always that easy. Trust me, I'm not saying it's that easy. It take work, but you just got to put the work in. And I would see, you know, I also took pride in doing the opposite of what I did before.
Okay.
That's another thing. I took pride in not doing things I did before.
Okay.
We talked about that A to B. On that journey from A to B, I took pride in not doing what I did on A.
Okay.
And once I took pride in that, it helped me get to B. It almost like a wind in my sail.
Okay.
Because none of that mattered anymore. I didn't live by that standard that I set for myself 20 years ago or however long ago before. I had a new standard. And with that new standard, certain things didn't fall in. Like I said, I changed my diet. You know, you know, if you're a vegetarian, you're not going to ask for that steak, no matter how good it looks.
Right.
It's just not your thing.
Right.
So that's kind of, you know.
Now, when did, if you remember, when did you write the goals?
It was, you know, when I was sitting.
Oh, okay.
But it was a long time ago.
Okay.
It was a long, 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 long time ago.
Wow. Can you share some of those goals?
Well, I mean, you know, yeah, some of them are like, you know, get a full-time income, get, you know, long-term job, you know, full-time income, get a car, you know, build credit, and do, you know, just the simple stuff, because I was so young when I was making so many of these mistakes, I didn't even have the chance of learning these things. So there was just, you know, getting an apartment, like there was just so many things that, like, I've, you know, at a young age, you're just thinking very differently at that time, and I had new responsibilities. I was you know, I was a father, and, and I had to learn so many skills on being an adult. Let's be real, like being an adult, you don't put that in perspective when you're young and you're dealing with that and you're living a certain way. And I think that that's hard. I think that, you know, I'm old enough now where I see, you know, they say you only live once, right? So when you're in your teens, adolescence, even in your young 20s, you don't know what it's like to be mid-30s, early 40s. You have no idea. There's only so much you can understand based on what you lived already. You know, so there's certain things that you get put in perspective once you get to a certain point, and you're like, wow, I needed time to learn that. You know, I was, you know, gone for that time when you normally learn that. So that was important. So because that was important to me, that's kind of how I made what I feasted on. That's what I wanted to make my reality. So that's why it was important. But yeah, some of those stuff were just that, like just being able to, you know, be mobile, get a job, build a career, start building a life. And I was able to do that.
One of the things, well, the four major things they say that people that come home, they face is what's next?
Yes, big thing.
Mental health.
Yes.
Issues with family and employment. What are your thoughts on that?
Are you saying those are the top 5 things?
Well, top 4.
Top 4, like the most popular, or that's what they say?
Well, that's what they say.
I would agree.
Okay.
I would agree.
Okay. Any suggestions on how one could address those? Each one, step by step.
Well, start with the first one. Give me the first.
What's next?
What's next? Yeah. What's next is you have to make a decision.
Okay.
First, you have to make a decision. Nothing can influence. Once you make a decision, you can't allow anything to influence that decision.
Okay.
You have to make a decision. What do you want to do? Because if whatever you're doing is leading you to a certain direction, if that door's open, even if the window's cracked, something's gonna, you know, somebody be cooking some chicken over there. The wind comes through the window, and now you're like pepping the going over there. You know, you got to make a decision. That's not for me. This is what I'm doing first. Once you make that decision, it'll clear up your perspective. You kind of got to do that first. So that will be the first thing.
Okay.
As simple as that sounds, that's the biggest thing. because you can't allow anything to creep in. You can't allow any doubt for that. You have to decide on your own 2 feet what direction that you are going to head in.
Okay.
And the last time I checked, you can't go in 2 directions at once. So if you decide to go forward, that's just what it is.
Okay.
This is no time for backwards. This is no time for sideways. This is what we're doing.
Okay.
And the bottom line is going forward, so nothing else has to matter.
Okay.
Once that comes into your mind, what's step 2?
Step 2, we can say family issues with family.
Family issues with family, like what kind of family issues?
Well, you know, it could be a number of things. It could be you can't stay here because you have a record. I mean, you know, the day-to-day family things that one may deal with. Not supporting the individual that has just came home.
I would say, for one, it's going to be really tough without any support.
Okay.
I would say, if you don't have any support out there, that's tough. But I would say how to deal with that goes back to owning your situation.
Okay.
At the end of the day, if I wanted to be completely honest with myself, nobody's going to feel bad for me for putting myself in these situations. This is my life. I made my choices. Now, there's sympathy. There's people that are going to have empathy. There's people that love me. They're going to care enough to lick my wounds with me. But this is my mess.
Right.
And that starts with owning the situation and taking accountability, because at that point, I'm not really, if you don't support me, if that's your choice, can I blame you?
No.
So, yes, it sucks and I have family support. Yes, it sucks and I have any support. But you know what starts to happen? People don't help people if they're not willing to help themselves.
Yes.
That is just a fact. And I know there's a good man up there that tells that has written down somewhere. But that is real life. The universe, you need to know that. If you're not willing to put that work in and carry your own water, there's nobody that's going to help you out. And that's one thing. So if I was looking for family support or sympathy from anybody else as it relates to getting on my, then I wouldn't get anywhere, because then I'll be looking for that. That's what happens is when those family that are not supportive, or those friends that aren't supportive, when they see you head down, you're working, you're putting yourself in position, you're doing what you have to do to get out of that situation, they will respect that first. And by default, what starts to happen is, hey, listen, I see you you're doing your thing. You need some help with that?
Right.
Maybe you deny it. Who knows? But at that, maybe you're strong enough you don't need it. But at that point, you've done your job. You took accountability for your actions, and you put yourself on a course where it doesn't really matter what they think anymore.
Right.
And that's really the most important thing. So when you can handle that part, I'd say you understand what you're doing. You make a decision. You own your situation, so you don't make it about family support, because it's going to be hard. But there is help out there.
Right.
But when you make that decision, you start to find the help, though. That's the thing. People don't realize it. When you make that decision and make that move, and that's forward, you start to see things that you didn't see.
Right.
You start to realize, wow, that was there this whole time.
Right.
And those resources start to open up to you. So that's the first 2 things.
Right.
What's the second? The third?
Mental health.
The mental health. Okay. Mental health is real. Mental health is a battle that I think that people don't like to talk about. It makes everybody uncomfortable. Even me sometimes. But I've done.
Why do you think that is?
Why? Because it's a stigma. It's looked at as weak. I personally don't believe that. But a lot of people think that if they admit to any kind of mental anything, that it's looked at as a weakness. I don't think it's weak. Let me ask you a question. If something that was uncomfortable to talk about by a large number, and you had the courage to talk about it, does that make you weak?
Absolutely not.
So when I look at it from that perspective, it's like, why is that person weak? Because he has the maturity to say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with, I need help. I think that's strength.
Right.
And I think that the stigma behind mental health and all those things are largely misinterpreted. And I think it's coming along, though. I think we have some people,
we definitely have.
You know, shout out Charlemagne. I used to listen to him in the morning. You know, on Breakfast Club, he talks about that. He's a big advocate. You know, Kevin Love in the NBA, you know, DeMar DeRozan. Some NBA players have opened up and talked about their history. So it's destigmatizing a little bit.
But, you know, that's what I question. Why does it take people on that statue before people want to accept or even acknowledge it?
Well, I think that we don't like to acknowledge it because at the end of the day, people at that step, they have a voice, and influence is power. And, you know, you got to understand that we come from a city where an era of, you know, since we're talking about those NBA players, I remember growing up, you saw people with tattoos and cornrows that weren't black, and who's doing that? That's
Right.
Iverson. So that's influence. You
Right.
see somebody that kind of influence, so you would want something like that to talk about these things. You would like that because that changes the game for the youth. Again, back to that first-hand representation.
Right.
If you have somebody like me telling you, hey, it's okay to fight through your mental health and overcome those battles, and it's okay to openly talk about it and seek help from people because it's only going to make you stronger. It's okay. Don't let them lie to you. It's okay.
Right.
If you had someone like me telling you that, well, then maybe you wouldn't feel that bad about it.
Right, right.
You know?
That's why I talk about the guest that was on last week in the group that he had. I think that's just great. We need to see more groups like that so that it brings awareness to it. And like you said, it doesn't make us weak. I shared this story once. I remember I was going through my stuff, and I was telling my spiritual mentor that I was depressed. And she said, the devil is a liar. She started rebuking, and I'm looking at her, no, this is real.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I think that a lot of times that's a barrier when you tell someone, no, you're not depressed. The devil is a liar. I mean, I know that God has given us, the strength to, deal with things and go through things, but sometimes you need that extra help.
Absolutely.
And I feel that that's so important. I think like more conversation like this and to bring more awareness would make the situation better.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Now, what was the next one? So that was mental health
And the fourth one?
Employment, I believe.
Employment. I like that. That one makes me laugh a little bit.
Why is that?
Because I think it's the biggest myth. One of the biggest myths out there that you can't get a job because you have a record or X, Y, Z. That is not true. Now, I'm not going to sit there and say it's factually not true. I can't say that. I mean, obviously, I've been denied jobs. But, again, people will help you when they see you putting the work in. Again, if anybody out there that has a family that has, or whatever it is, if you're willing and you're able and you have a few things that are holding you back, trust me, there are people out there who are willing to see past that if you are willing and able. If you show up every day and you put yourself on the front line, you make yourself available, there are people who are willing to accept you, but it takes that kind of effort. You have to understand, you already put yourself behind the eight ball, so with that understanding, back to step one, acknowledging where I was at so that I can make that move forward, there's going to be somebody out there that, okay, if you have to be I don't know what it is, custodian or, construction or work at McDonald's or whatever it is to get if it's just that, if you just get your foot in the door and let your work and your character speak for itself, that is everything. So I look at employment. I remember one time, I actually was applying for a job early on, I think, I figured it was something that I could do. It was limited. It was like whatever I could do it. And they denied me. And they told me I was like, I don't know if they said I was overqualified or unqualified. I don't know what it was. But they denied me. And I remember vividly somebody there was like way unqualified to work there. I shouldn't have worked there. And I looked at them and I was like, wow, I can't work here. I'm not qualified to be here. But this person could work here. Something about that didn't add up. So I knew right there, it was like, it's not really just about the record. It's really about, you can make it more than that. So at that point, I took I just made sure I just was really aggressive in certain areas. And when it came down to employment, I was just you have to be very aggressive in that area, knowing your situation. You can't run from it. I found a lot of times when you I don't want to say you tell everybody your business, but when you're just like, when you own your situation, like your baggage, that helps. You're running from it, it's like, hey, listen, this is where I'm at, this is what it is, but I'm a workhorse, I'm here to play.
Right.
Give me this opportunity, you're not going to regret it.
Right.
Let that speak. Let that do the talking. Anything on paper can be anything on paper. People can look good on paper and be horrible workers.
There you go.
And you can look bad on paper and be the greatest worker.
Right.
But if you don't give yourself the opportunity to do that, then you're just robbing yourself. And if you're looking at the situation from the back end like, I got this record, it's not going to work, then you already lost. You're not even the kind of person that they want.
Right.
So understand that. That's really what it is. That's why I laugh at the employment thing, because it's like, that's just an excuse at some point.
Right. A lot of people may say that, yeah, there is work out there, but McDonald's is not enough for me to feed my family. What do you say to that?
Okay, I would say that may be true. you know, depending on the situation. But there are other things. I think nowadays we live in a society where there's just so much education on how to do for yourself. Now, I'm not saying I'm an expert. I don't want anybody to come off like, if I come off like I'm an expert, thank you, because I'm not. But the reality of the situation is, I just lived it. I just have firsthand experience. So I understand it from that perspective, where it's like, if there's certain things that you want to do, you got to go out there and obtain. And yes, you might be limited for a while, but it's not every move. Sometimes you got to take a few steps before you could, you know, start sprinting. Sometimes you fall back. You got to take a few steps back to catapult yourself forward.
Right.
So if that person says, 15 or this isn't enough, well, it's for now.
Right.
It's temporary. I would say to that person, it's a start.
Right.
And it's building. You want to talk about resume. You know, you have something on your resume. What if you're good enough and you become the manager?
Right.
Now what are we talking? So now you worked at McDonald's for 8 months, you became the manager. You don't think somebody else might want to use you?
Right.
So at what point, if you don't put yourself in position, then you're never going to reap the rewards of the opportunity.
Right.
So that's really what I say. And I'm not an expert. I understand how hard it is. I'm not trying to say it, but you got to want to do it. What I find, though, and I'm not that old, I'm not even that young, I'm the middle brother, like shout out J. Cole. What I find, though, is people are lazy. In this generation, don't nobody want to do anything.
Right.
That's just what it boils down to. And people use any excuse to stay on a bench.
Now, why do you think this? You said this generation. Why do you think people are lazy?
We live in a different time. It's different now. It's not how it was. You know, I mean, you could actually make money from home online now.
Right.
Doing something what we're doing right now.
Right.
You know, so that's enabled people to, you know, a lot of industries are very archaic in the way that they do things. And that's rubbing a lot of people off. A lot of people are realizing their value more and more and more. And what that is happening is people are just trying to, and we've never been more empowered than we are today to be, you know, to do what we want to do. So right now it's like a talent-based world. Like I'm a history buff a little bit, but there was a time in this country where all the hustlers were doing it, you know. We see all these in Boston, New York, all these cities where we had the markets on the street and the fishermen. Like now, they're all corporations, they're all buildings.
Right.
But there was a time where they was out there getting it.
Right.
And we lost that because we built a different society. Now that was years and years and years and years and years and years ago, but it catches up. So now we're at a different time.
Right.
A digital age, an information age, where everything's online. So we have we're just kind of caught in the first wave of that. I think it's going to look real different in 20 years. But I think right now, what you're seeing is, you know, people my age and the young generation kind of going, whoa, wait a minute. This is a little different from what we're used to.
Right.
And then that's just what it is. People nowadays realize that, whoa, I'm going to go to work, fight traffic, do this and do that for somebody that's going to replace me if I had a bad day. Who's going to hit me, like, that's happening more and more and more. So it's really a domino effect more than it's just people being lazy. But I do find that people don't want to work.
Okay.
So back to what we're speaking on, people that have gone through adversity, if you're willing to work, that's going to speak for itself. Okay.
Speaking of time changing, I feel like COVID, when COVID hit, what was it, 2019?
Yeah, 2020,
yeah. A lot of people use that to tap into their own resources within themselves. For an example, my cup here was made by someone that's very dear to me. She said that pre-COVID, she didn't have an interest in doing this. This is actually her business now. Shout out to Asia Creation. So yeah, I see a lot of people that have tapped into, you know, their own personal resources, found a trade, taught themselves, because there's a lot of like you talked about self-help earlier. There's a lot of self-help. Speak to that. How have you seen things change since COVID hit?
Well, I love that. That's really, first off, that's awesome, because that's what I want to see more of too. You know, that's what we like. You know, everybody since COVID, I think everybody's kind of got into their bag of tricks a little bit. You know, they're going back to old hobbies. you know, finding new ones, whatever it is. I support that too. I think that that's really kind of the state of the country, the world now. Everybody's getting more empowered. You know, they have a saying, you know, you got a talent, they're gonna pay for it.
Right.
You know, if you're gifted. So you just got to find out what that is. And I think nowadays people are realizing their value individually more. And COVID just kind of put the spotlight on that.
Right.
It just kind of put everybody in a zone where it's like, okay, I can't leave the house. Let's figure something out.
Right.
I think we've all, and again, there's the information that's out there. We've all worked ourselves to death. We've all lived for the weekend. We've all had these experiences, and that we all realize that it can get a little better than that.
Right.
How do we do it? Well, that's what the information is out there for. So I'm not here to say that I'm any better than anybody or anybody's better than me, but the information is out there for everybody to take advantage of.
Right.
You know, that's really what it is right now. And I think never before were people empowered to do that. I think before, you know, even starting out as an entrepreneur, it was hard. Not even just 9 years ago. It was hard to get people in the, you know, in the cities to understand even what it was like to be entrepreneurial. Now that's different. People now, it's like it's a language people like to speak. People are talking about it. The kids, it's on TikTok, it's on IG, it's in the culture. People are talking about it now. So it's definitely, you know, heading in the right direction.
Right. Now, let's talk about support. Do you feel that new entrepreneurs coming out or coming up get the support and the support from their own community?
Okay, so it's not always like that, though. You know, sometimes I think people get what do you mean by support, though?
Because I hear a lot of people say that their own people won't support them. Or you see people, you may have a business, and because I know you, I want to come to you and ask you to give me a discount. That's not really supporting your business.
It isn't at all. I would say to them, you got to build it anyway. Because that's usually how it is. That's just the reality of the situation. You know, I would say, when you step out, I know a little bit about building from the ground up and building networks and building teams and looking for people and reliable people. That's some of the hardest things. And so a lot of times you go into situations and you have a vision of it being your people. But it's not always those people. People don't always like-minded like you.
Right.
And sometimes it's like, you know, they will see you making those water bottles at home, and you charge them $20 for it, and they're like, dang, $20, give me $15. But then go buy one that says, you know, Louis on it for $80 just because of that. So, but I can tell you, I don't know Louis, but I'm pretty sure when Louis was starting out, his friends probably thought it was a joke too.
Right.
But now look at it, you know.
Absolutely.
So it's usually that's how it is. Unfortunately, I don't create the laws of the universe, but I would say if you have the work, you know, if you have a vision, a dream, or something that you really like doing and you believe in that, it don't really matter what, you know. Sometimes that's the first step, seeing if you're really gonna do it or not. It's getting past the first wall is your friends. It's usually the first time you hear everybody telling you, nah, it doesn't make any sense, don't do that. Sorry, I moved my hands a little bit, but once you get to that point, it's like, again, it always comes back to make the decision.
Right. No, I agree with you with that. I can remember when I started my business 20 years ago, December the 8th, 2021, made 20 years. And when I first started, I actually started on Linden Ave in our TV room, and it actually grew that I had to rent office space and stuff. And I had support from my family, but then there were people that didn't support, that you would think that supported but wanted to benefit, you know, from it. But I couldn't allow that to stop me because this was something that I was passionate about.
I appreciate hearing that, because you know what I found, when you take that approach, they all come back.
Of course.
They always come back.
Of course.
You know, and when I mean they, I mean the ones that didn't support you at first. When they see your persistence, that's when they start to come back. And that's why I say, if you believe in it, just go and do it.
Right.
So, and you know, support is relative, because, you know, it does feel good to have people in your corner that want to go for you, but sometimes that could be your motivation.
Right. And I feel this too, that it may not be the support, and this has been my experience, it may not be the support that you want, but there is support out there and you will get that support.
Absolutely.
You know?
You know, I got a cousin, I got a really, he's like a brother cousin of mine. Shout out to him. He always say, he was like, yo, he'll say to me all the time, he's like, man, you be thinking too much. And be like, he'll be like, listen, what you might not like, everybody would love it. You know, and there's times where, you know, I've seen that actually happen. So sometimes it's like, you know, you might not get the support from those that you're looking for, the support from people supporting you.
Right.
People are supporting you. I know, you know, I like to think that, you know, not everybody's willing. You know, sometimes you find the support in different ways, and it comes in ways that you've never seen it before. I think we think that support is people buying into this, or we think support is supposed to be what we want it to be.
Right.
But there's other forms of support.
Right.
I just think you got to tap into that.
Right.
It's hard to find that out though.
I'm glad that you said that because I think about support too. You may not know anything about the business, but when I feel like I want to just give up, support also is encouraging me to move forward.
Absolutely.
You know, a support can be me being able just to vent to you.
Absolutely.
You know, so like you said, support comes in different ways.
Absolutely does.
Yes. Now you talked about getting your credit intact at the beginning.
Yeah. Well, I didn't have any credit at the time, so.
Well, you build credit, so let's still get it intact. Can you share that with the audience?
Well, I mean, you know, it's just something. I mean, I'm not an expert.
No, you don't have to be, but.
I mean, just being an adult. You know, there's just certain things that I think that we take for granted. Like, I just think that growing up, let's use the school system for what it is, right? What high school do you know that they're telling you about that stuff?
Well, see, for me, it was different because I was born many moons ago. But my 18-year-old son talks about that now. We taught him how to write a check, how to balance the checkbook. He said he wished that he was taught that in school.
Right.
So a lot of things that I may have been taught in school is not being taught today. But then, okay, go on, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, but then I feel it's the responsibility of family and parents, caregivers, to teach these things to our children.
So that's the thing. So it gets taught though. But see, this is what I would say. Kids spend most of their time in school, right? Kids spend most of their time, you know, away from the house, back, you know, for the most part. They tune out there. Like, I know I was a kid before, I have kids now. I'm always, you know, sometimes dad's got to talk 50 times. So, but it's not like, you know, from what I understand school now is, you go to school, what, 8 hours a day?
Yeah, something like that.
5 days a week? Sounds a lot like work to me. So they don't understand that.
Right.
But we do now.
Right.
So my thing is, you're conditioning them to be great employees, to understand the 40-hour work week, but what else are we conditioning them for? So I'm not saying that that's my problem or everybody's personal problem, but I just find that, you know, and I'm not saying that I necessarily wasn't taught these things growing up. That's not even the thing. It's more or less taking this education and actually applying that education as a responsible adult. Coming from the backgrounds that we come from, I don't think that that's talked about. I can tell you right now, all the barbershops that I went to or that's not what they're talking about back then. It's just not. In fact, if you want to talk about it now, it's even challenging in certain circles.
Right.
You know, because it's not common knowledge in certain circles. Now, I'm not saying that people don't do it. I'm not saying the conversations don't happen at home. I'm not saying that I haven't learned it at home. What I'm saying is people applying these skills, you know, every day and building, taking ownership of their life.
Okay.
Coming from where we come from, going through those adversities, whether you have background or been locked up or whatever the case may be, you just got to take ownership. And I don't think a lot of people take time to understand that part of it. And I think that once you take ownership of the situation, there's a lot of that. I went into a little, that's all just part of it.
Okay.
That's just what I really wanted to say.
Okay. All right. So if I understand you correctly, you're saying that ownership is I agree with you, ownership is key, a major factor. But I also hear you saying that more conversations need to be had.
Yeah, I think that people need to more conversations need to be had, and because with the education part of it is, it's you got to hold yourself accountable too. So when I don't say education as far as school education, I mean education on life education.
Okay.
Like, who's gonna tell these people? Like, who's gonna tell these kids? I know people who are grown adults, my age, who do things, and I ask myself, like, no one's ever told you that wasn't okay.
Right.
I can't believe it. Like, some of it's just so left field, and I'm like, okay, so no one's ever told you. So you, at this point, who's going to? Who's going to check that? That's just the type of behavior that is normalized in certain cultures, and I'm just saying, like, why is that normal?
So how do we change that? I mean, because
it starts with, first and foremost, it takes a lot of. It's going to take some strong personality a little bit, but you have to understand. You know, as a father, one of the biggest things that I tell my son is, you know, I'm already prepping about being a black man because that's important to understand. Because
how old is he?
He'll be 12.
Okay.
So when you understand, he's a twin, he's a sister too. When you understand it like that, when you're a kid, you have this innocence to you where you don't see the world for what it is yet.
Yes.
And I feel like, from what I've understood and from what I've learned, that there's other groups of kids that no, they're not blindsided by life at all. They're living life as a kids, but they are being trickled into what to expect of them. And I feel like a lot of times what we see is, you know, people don't really know what to expect of themselves.
Right.
Then they get to a certain point, and you're old, you're an adult, you're part of the workforce now. You're supposed to be a valued member of society. You don't know nothing.
Right.
You don't have any skills. You don't know anything.
Right.
No one's ever taught you. And not to say that nobody taught you, you didn't take the initiative to. It wasn't really forced upon you, and that's nobody's fault. But what I'm saying is, that's the culture, though. And why is it what's normal in certain cultures isn't normal around where we're from? So all I'm speaking towards is about that representation. Nowadays, and I'm going to say, you got to give credit to some of these great minds, some of these rappers and some of these artists that are empowering the youth, who are now starting to talk about these things. And you're seeing it. You're seeing people responding to that. You're seeing people that look like me who have more power than me, who are being able to get their voice out there. And you're getting a culture of people who are seeing it that way. So that we just need more of that. More of that.
Now, you said something. I want you to touch on that. You said you're teaching your son how to be a black man.
Yes.
Share that. What does that look like?
Well, I mean, I'm still learning too.
Okay. Okay.
You know, and when I say that, I mean, you know, every day I live it. And what I understood is, I just teach them about, you know, it's just really about character.
Okay.
It's about being rich in character. As far as being a black man goes, is understanding that I think it's not a secret that how far we've come, but it's also not a secret how not everybody's proud of that. So it gets hard sometimes, and there are situations where you catch yourself in, you know, I've been on like, you know, I've seen it firsthand. You know, you take young kids and you take them to a certain sporting arena and they hear things that they're not even used to hearing. Okay. They don't even understand why they're hearing it because they're just playing with all the other kids. You know, so it's just certain things that, you know, I don't want to say you got to have tough skin, but, you know, it is what it is. I mean, there's just certain things we already looked at upon a certain way. I mean, you know, I got long hair, I got a beard, I got locks. People might look at me, they might think a certain way off the rip. And what I represent has to tear down that wall immediately. Right. And that is what it's all about.
And how do you do that, though?
Well, it's all about the diet.
Okay.
It's all about that mental diet.
Okay.
What you believe in yourself, what you feed yourself. Because you will believe what you tell yourself.
Right. You tell yourself enough, you definitely will. And your action will portray that too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know what's, as you was talking, with my 3 older children, I was a single mom, and one of my children is a male. And I used to always say to him, I cannot teach you how to be a man. I can only teach you what I think a man should be or how a man should act. And not to say that he did. His father was very involved in his life, but his father passed when he was 8 years old. And he had other strong males in his life. But,
preaching.
You know, we as women have to get that concept that we can't.
Can I just say that I appreciate that? I literally just had that conversation with my son.
Okay.
Because I appreciate my mother for help me understand that. I feel like she always did a good job of like putting me like. That's one thing I appreciate hearing from a strong black woman is you cannot teach a man how to be a man. I think that a lot of women struggle with accepting that. I think a lot of people struggle with accepting that. And no more than I can teach my daughter how to be a woman.
That's right.
You know, all I can actually do is make sure that they are the kind of people, they are prepped and armed and ready for the situation, that they can make the right choice in that situation.
Right.
That's all I can ask for.
Right.
That's all I can pray for.
Right.
And that's what I got to build. Because
Right.
at the end of the day, I'm not going to be there all the time.
Right. Right.
You know, so.
We're going to have to wrap up for the last two shows.
So
I've been
we can
going
talk
over.
all day.
I know.
That's it? Come on, man. Another round? Let me start.
Can you speak to the or leave some parting words with our audience?
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank everybody for having me again. It was a pleasure to come back. It was definitely, I enjoyed being here. It was a great experience. But I do want to say this, though. I really want the point to be made that if you're somebody out there that feels like your circumstances, your reality, or whatever it is you're going through is the reason why you can't get to the next level, really take a step back. Sometimes when I really take a step back, assess the whole situation, get personal with yourself, hold yourself accountable, and ask yourself, what are you really doing to get to that step? If whatever you're doing is taking yourself away from getting that, focus again. And I really want you to understand from the bottom of my heart that it does not matter what your record looks like. It doesn't matter what you've been through. If you really want it, and you put yourself in position, it's going to be hard not to find an opportunity. You got to get aggressive with that. It's your life. It's your life on the line. It's your legacy on the line. You got to get aggressive about that. And I just want to say, think positive, stay positive, you know, positive vibes only.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we thank you for being here with us. Once again, this is The Best Is Yet to Come. We're wrapping up another segment, and we will be here next week, same time, same station. And in closing, I bid you peace, love, and blessings always, and remember the best is yet to come. Thank you.